DogWorks Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dog Works. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com.
Start your day tomorrow with The Daily Dog with Michele Forto, the morning podcast on DogWorks Radio. Apple Podcast reviewer Patty Christensen calls it funny, smart, and filled with all the info I want to know about dogs. I love this show. Wake up with The Daily Dog, available on DogWorks Radio on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your shows.
You are listening to The Daily Dog with your host, Michele Forto. The Daily Dog offers training advice, tips and tricks, and maybe even a book or movie review, too.
Hello and welcome, everybody. It's Michele Forto with The Daily Dog. We hope you've enjoyed our series on the principles of learning and behavior. We're going to continue today, classical or respondent conditioning. Respondent, classical, and Pavlovian conditioning all refer to types of learning in which a neutral stimulus is repeatedly paired with an unconditioned stimulus. A biologically relevant stimulus is one that either causes pleasure or pain. Arguably, the most famous example of respondent conditioning was the previously mentioned experiment of Ivan Pavlov, conducted in Russia. Pavlov's famous dog salivated at the sound of a metronome. From this point forward, this instrument will be called a bell. After being conditioned to do so, sounding the bell and then placing food in the dog's mouth accomplished the conditioning. The food caused the dogs to salivate reflexively. After this procedure was repeated a number of times, Pavlov found that the sound of the bell alone caused the dogs to salivate. The elements of respondent conditioning in Pavlov's experiment are as follows. Unconditioned stimulus. A stimulus that causes a specific reflexive response without requiring learning or conditioning. In Pavlov's experiment, the food is the unconditioned stimulus. Unconditioned response. The reflexive response to an unconditioned stimulus. In Pavlov's experiment, salivation is the unconditioned response. Neutral stimulus. A stimulus that has no meaning to the subject. In Pavlov's experiment, the neutral stimulus was the sound of the bell prior to the conditioning. Conditioned response. A learned response. In Pavlov's experiment, the conditioned response was the dog's salivation at the sound of the bell. Conditioned stimulus. A stimulus that causes a conditioned response. In Pavlov's experiment, the ringing of the bell without the giving of the food is the conditioned stimulus. Pairing. The presenting of a neutral stimulus just prior to and perhaps during the presenting of the unconditioned stimulus. Unconditioned reflexes are a simple form of behavior made up of unconditioned stimuli and unconditioned responses. Reflexes and reflexive behavior help animals adjust to the changing circumstances of their environment. Dogs possess a wide assortment of reflexive responses. Most reflective actions are constant when an unconditioned stimulus that is sufficiently noticeable or prominent is present. The corresponding unconditioned response is always elicited. An example would be getting something in your eye and then your eye beginning to water. The foreign substance in your eye would be the unconditioned stimulus, and if it were noticeable enough, the unconditioned stimulus would elicit your reflective tearing action, the unconditioned response. In contrast, conditioned reflexes are a result of respondent conditioning and occur when an unconditioned response is brought under the control of a previously neutral stimulus. This process is accomplished by pairing a neutral stimulus with an unconditioned stimulus that is capable of eliciting a reflex. It is important to note that the presentation of the neutral stimulus must be presented prior to the unconditioned stimulus in order for the conditioning to be effective. After the neutral and unconditioned stimuli are paired, Gradually, the neutral stimulus becomes a conditioned stimulus and elicits what has then become a conditioned response. In doing so, a conditioned reflex has been created. Sensory preconditioning, latent inhibition, and learned irrelevance are some of the unique phenomena that have been discovered which can significantly influence respondent conditioning. Sensory preconditioning occurs when two neutral stimuli are paired together prior to being conditioned with an unconditioned stimulus. It has been found that either of the neutral stimuli can be conditioned alone and the other will also be conditioned, even though it has not had any direct association with the unconditioned stimuli. For example, if the tone of the bell were sufficiently associated or paired with the sound emitted from a clicker, and then the bell was paired with an unconditioned stimulus such as food, the unconditioned response of salivation could be elicited with either the bell or the unconditioned clicker. Latent inhibition occurs when a neutral stimulus is repeatedly presented in what the canine perceives as the absence of an unconditioned stimulus. As a result of repeated and unreinforced presentations of the stimulus, the canine's ability to perform conditioned associations are impaired. Learned irrelevance occurs when the neutral or conditioned stimuli are repeatedly presented without reinforcement. The stimulus then becomes irrelevant to the dog. Learned irrelevance can also occur when both the neutral stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus are presented in such a manner that the neutral stimulus does not accurately predict the occurrence of the unconditioned stimulus. Respondent conditioning plays a pivotal role in fear reaction in canines. A low threshold of a canine startle response might precipitate a fear reaction in a dog. For example, if the dog was in close proximity to a car when the car backfired, the dog very well may come to associate the presence of cars with the feared noise. This conditioned fear could ultimately cause the canine's behavior to become erratic in the presence of any car. In the previous scenario, the canine's erratic behavior could possibly be manipulated using the same respondent conditioning principles that created the behaviors in the first place. The most commonly used types of respondent conditioning used in dog training are habituation, the process whereby an animal or person begins to have less of a negative reaction to an event after they have been exposed to it several times. Counter conditioning, used to undo the effects of an earlier conditioned experience. Systematic desensitization, a type of counter-conditioning that involves relaxation training and a hierarchy ranging from the least problematic situation to the most problematic situation. Flooding, the canine is exposed to the offending stimulus for a fixed period of time and escape is not permitted. Note, flooding must be used with caution. Some dogs resist this technique so profusely they can become aggressive and dangerous to the average handler. Wow, you guys, that was a lot of information to take in. We're going to continue our segment on the principles of learning and behavior with operant conditioning on the next episode. Up next is our breed of the day. The Samoyed, dog of the ages with a history and tradition as fascinating as the breed itself. The legend runs that from the plateau of Iran, man's first earthly habitat, as the sons of man multiplied, the mightier tribes drove the lesser ones, with their families, their herds, and their dogs farther and farther away in order that the natural food found there might be ample for those remaining. Onward and still farther north through Mongolia, then the center of the world's culture, on and on went the lesser tribes, until eventually the Samoyed peoples of the family of Samoyed, reliably described as in the transition stages between the Mongolian pure and the Finn, found themselves safely entrenched behind bulwarks of snow and ice in the vast stretches of tundra reaching from the White Sea to the Yenisei River. Here, for generations, they lived a nomadic life, dependent upon their reindeer herds and upon their dogs as reindeer shepherds, sledge dogs, and household companions. Here, through the centuries, the Samoyed has bred true. Of all modern breeds, the Samoyed is most nearly akin to the primitive dog. No admixture of wolf or fox runs in the Samoyed strain. The Arctic suns and snows have bleached the harsh standoff coat and tipped the hairs with an icy sheen. The constant companionship with man through the years has given an almost uncanny human understanding, while generations of guarding reindeer, requiring always a protector, never a killer, has developed through the ages in the breed, a disposition unique in the canine world. Nor has the long human association made the stalwart Samoyed a pampered pet. As work dogs, Samoyeds of the Great Arctic and Antarctic expeditions have a record of achievement unexcelled in the canine world. The sledge dogs of early polar explorer Fridtjof Nansen, 19 males averaging 58.7 pounds each and 9 bitches averaging 50.5 pounds, working day after day under conditions of utmost hardship, drew 1.5 times their own weight of supplies and worked with the joyous abandon and carefree air typical of the breed. Each new expedition, Jackson Harmsworth, the Doody Abruzzi, Borgachev, Shackleton Scott, and most notably Roald Amundsen, in his successful reach of the South Pole in 1911, added new luster to the breed's history. Introduced in England about 100 years ago, practically every show sees the Samoyeds in the forefront. Queen Alexandra was an ardent fancier, and the descendants of her dogs are found today in many English and American kennels. The dog is found in every region. Samoyeds born in northern Siberia have safely crossed the equator and remained in healthy condition to work in Antarctic snows. Dogs from Antarctic expeditions have survived the suns of Australia to return to England and start great kennels there. Excitingly eye-arresting, the big white dog with the smiling face and dark, intelligent eyes with a strong, sturdy, muscular body on legs built for speed, the Samoyed is for many the most beautiful breed in existence. An excellent watchdog, yet gentle and companionable. Never a troublemaker, yet able to hold his own when forced into a fight. With an independent born of unusual intelligence, yet marked with a loyalty to a loved owner that wins hearts. His noble characteristics evidence themselves even in puppies. The little white teddy bears, dependable guardian, gentle, kind, sturdy, adaptable, the Samoyed carries in its face and heart the spirit of Christmas the whole year through. General conformation. The Samoyed, being essentially a working dog, should present a picture of beauty, alertness, and strength with agility, dignity, and grace. As his work lies in cold climates, his coat should be very heavy with weather resistant, well groomed, and of good quality rather than quantity. The male carries more of a ruff than the female. He should not be long in the back, as a weak back would make him practically useless for his legitimate work. But at the same time, a close-coupled body would also place him at a great disadvantage as a draft dog. Breeders should aim for the happy medium, a body not long but muscular, allowing liberty with a deep chest and well-sprung ribs, a strong neck, straight front, and especially strong loins. Males should be masculine in appearance and deportment without unwarranted aggressiveness. Bitches feminine without weakness of structure or apparent softness of temperament. Bitches may be slightly longer in back than males. They should both give the appearance of being capable of great endurance but free from coarseness. Because of the depth of chest required, the legs should be moderately long. A very short-legged dog is to be deprecated. Hindquarters should be particularly well developed, stifles well bent, and any suggestion of unsound stifles or cowhocks severely penalized. General appearance should include movement and general conformation, indicating balance and good substance. Thank you for listening to The Daily Dog. We hope you tune in again.
Did you know that Alaska Dog Works trains service dogs for those in need throughout North America? Each and every service dog that is trained through the Lead Dog Service Dog Program and Michele Forto and her team has an individual training plan. We train for autistic, mobility, psychiatric, and PTSD for our soldiers for service work. If you know of someone that may need a service dog, please take a moment and check out Alaska Dog Works on social media and at alaskadogworks.com.
If you like our podcast, there are a few things you can do. You can take a couple of minutes and go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also check out all of our DogWorks Radio sponsors and promotions in our show notes. Another thing you can do is go over to Facebook, like our Facebook page, and one last thing, please tell all of your friends by spreading the word about DogWorks Radio. Thank you so much for listening to us. We really appreciate you.
DogWorks Radio is produced by Robert Forto. Logo art by Angry Squirrel Studios. DogWorks Radio is produced in conjunction with KVRF 89.7 in Palmer, Alaska.
For dog training advice, you can contact Alaska Dog Works at 907-841-1686 or visit their website at alaskadogworks.com. If you have a show idea or would like to be a guest, please contact us by sending an email to live@dogworksradio.com.